This is John Matysiak, and you're listening to the Monday Morning Creative Podcast.
So I've been dying all day to talk to the kid or the guy who's third generation Polish immigrants, grew up in Houston. I am 50% Polish. My mom was born there. John, can you speak it?
I cannot. No. But my father's grandmother did not speak any English.
My babcia didn't speak any English at all. And she was in this country for 35 or 40 years, but the hardest working, kindest woman that could do anything.
Yeah.
And I don't know how she navigated in this country for however long she was here for, but seamlessly, amazing. How did you like Houston? How did you like growing up in Houston?
It was great. I mean, I grew up kind of in a small suburb outside of Houston, Sugarland. And so, yeah, it was a great place to grow up. My parents were both educators. My dad was a band director. My mom was a choir teacher. And then my dad later became an administrator of a different school district there. But no, I had a very, it was great. I grew up where you played outside till the street lights came on, and then you came in. It was one of those kind of analog generation, I guess. We didn't have devices or anything like that. So it was just a really kind of great childhood, I suppose.
How many years of your life are in Houston, John?
18.
Wow. And you go right from there to Emerson? Do I have that timeline right?
Yeah.
I swear, John, it's unbelievable. Whether I'm interviewing composers or actors or cinematographers, I feel like Boston is I went to Northeastern, so I feel like Boston is the place to be, or not Boston, Massachusetts in general. It has so many schools that fulfill so many needs from so many people that have these dreams that they want to fulfill and carry out. It's amazing how many times a school that they go to is out of Massachusetts. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, well, there's more schools per square mile, I think, right? But there's more schools there than anywhere in the country, I believe. And so, no, it was great. It was kind of on a whim. I had a teacher my senior year, a creative writing teacher, submitted a play I'd written, not a very good play, but a play I'd written to some Emerson Writing Awards contest. And so I think because she submitted to this play, they sent me an application packet. And so it was kind of late in my senior year that I kind of even discovered Emerson, and then went there, did a tour, and heard some of the faculty speak. And then my parents selfishly were like, okay, if you want to do this is, you're going to be in a totally different state. You're going to go from being born and raised in Texas to all of a sudden we're going to drop in the middle of the city. And I was like, let's do it, sink or swim. So I felt very supported, that they kind of, got dropped off at the deep end, so to speak.
Any homesickness for you, John, at first?
No, it was I had interned at a production company in Houston over the summer.
Right.
Bill Young Productions. It's no longer a thing anymore. But at the time, they were one of the biggest producers of commercials. And so by the end of that summer, I found myself working as a grip on a Kroger commercial. And so I learned how to use a C-stand kind of thing. And so that I just kind of knew that I knew nothing about filmmaking. I didn't do any kind of video production in high school or anything. And so I just knew I wanted to get some type of a leg up or know something before starting film school. And so I'd read some books as well. There was a used bookstore that I would go buy all these making of these kind of classic independent films like Clerks, and Evil Dead, and just the making of these kind of these independent films. And so one of the things I remember reading somewhere where they said go learn all the cameras when you get to film school. Just go learn the cameras. Sit down and ask someone how does this camera work? How does that camera work? They're all film cameras, all 16 millimeter cameras back then.
Right.
So I kind of did that. I just was I want to learn all the different cameras, even though if I'm not supposed to be using them till I'm a junior, I still want to learn it and know how to use it as soon as possible. And so, yeah, I found that time at Emerson was just really, really great. It was a lot of hands-on experience.
And I have questions about camera. It's funny that you say that, but I'm going to hold off on that. I did want to say, do you feel it was a BA in film production? Is that right, John?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, film production and film theory, I guess, technically, something like that.
When you look in the rear view, how vital do you view Emerson as part of your path? For
me, it was probably essential. But I think any kind of film school, I feel like coming out of film school or college in general, it's where at least for me, I learned how to learn. And so by the end of that, you kind of know your process or know how you kind of interact with the world and how you can learn. So Was there specific things I learned? Yes, but I think it was more just the mentality of figuring out a process or learning how to learn was essential. And so for me it was, because they had like this extension program, I think they still do, where, you know, they take these kids from Boston, they drop you off in LA, and they're like, cool, get your internship and kind of like feed you to the wolves kind of thing. And so that was great too. It was like there's camaraderie in a group of people, you know, coming out from school in Boston to like moving to LA. And so I moved out like, 2002, I think it was. Yeah, it was great. I mean, I still keep in touch with a lot of my film school friends and colleagues and peers, you know, and this past year I actually shot 2 features with a film school friend of mine.
Wow.
You know? And so, yeah, it's funny how things, how it all kind of comes back full circle.
And I wonder how much of what you have or what you are is just you were born with it or practice, or because I have to say, like, researching your life, even I was looking like at some of your pictures on Instagram, even like the stuff you do casually is like beautiful. Like, I mess up pictures with my daughter. I'll take it 20 times. You know, eyes are getting crossed. I mean, it's just terrible. I'm terrible. I was looking at one you had of your beautiful family, and it was like the Christmas tree was over. It looked like something out of a Rockwell painting. I mean, it was just like stunning. Like, I mean, I don't know how much of that is natural for you or years of just working at it, but Jesus, John, are you meant to be doing what you're doing?
Well, thank you. Yeah, those Christmas photos are definitely a thing. We need to get back on them because we always wanted a Christmas photo. We're like, how can we do it different, you know? And so
I think you succeeded in that.
Those always take a fair amount of time and lots of stitching of different photographs together. I feel like I have to relearn Photoshop every year. Every December, I'm relearning Photoshop.
Yeah, boy, but you have it done really, really well. And then, you know, after Emerson, you go to the Czech National Film School. Is that correct?
Yeah, they had a program where you could do like a semester over in Prague, and
gotcha.
And yeah, that was monumental. That was really monumental because I feel like it was just you're in a different country, a different style of filmmaking. You're learning the history of like the Czech New Wave and what they did, and so that was really. And some of the professors there were actual real filmmakers that had shot these films that you'd seen, that, you know, on Criterion collections and stuff. And so like, It was just kind of this eye-opening experience of like, for me, I feel like I learned the power of the close-up, or like, that was like the power of the close-up and when to use the close-up. I feel like that whole semester, my whole time there, it was like, when to use a close-up and then how to frame a close-up. And obviously, you know, you kind of take that and run with it over the years. But yeah, if anything, I remember that it was like the power of the language of cinema, and the power of the close-up. It was great.
You know, John, and I feel like cinematographers, I feel like each has their own strength that they would admit to, right? So I had Dan Louston on a couple months back. He did Nightmare Alley. He's known for his phenomenal lighting. Like Guillermo del Toro just loves it. Is there something that you believe is your strength that you do really well? I mean, from my end, you do a lot of things really well. But how about from your end? Is there I mean, it's not you being arrogant either. It's just something you feel that you're really strong at.
I know in the kind of commercial world that I kind of have been working in for a fair amount of years, though, like I feel like I would get hired or people would respond to the way I shoot portraits or the way I shoot close-ups. Kind of bring this back to that thing we're talking about, the film school even, you know? So I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's something, you know, it's where you place the camera, you know, it's those 2 inches higher or lower or to the left or taking that half step in right before the director says action, you know, that make the difference on stuff like that. So I don't know. I feel like I'm always trying to push or find the frame that interests me. You know, if something doesn't interest me, I'm always searching up until the last minute.
Yeah.
Even if the slate's already, you know, if you're not happy with a frame or composition or something, you know, there's always something to be done to it. But in terms of strengths, it's like I feel like I have to let other people kind of respond to the work. You know, I feel like every project's so different, you know. For a while, I mean, I like using the appropriate tools for the job. You know, I'm not the kind of, you know, if it can be done simply, I'd rather do it simply than complicated, I guess, in terms of like tools and technique, because sometimes you can get bogged down in the technique and the tools, rather than just this idea of you have actors and you have a camera and you have choices. You know, I mean, that's how I break it down, almost on, you know, on a day-to-day level, I guess, you know. And so I don't know, I'm constantly reminded of that. Like, it's all about just the choices we make on the day, because the frames last forever, you know, or they should.
Yeah, no, that's really well said. You know, and I've heard you on a few cinematography podcasts, and I really find out how much I don't know about cinematography. Like, I can watch your work, John, and be like, God damn, that scene is beautiful, or that what he just did there is just so beautiful, how he used those different lenses. But like, I feel like it's the terms, John, that I'm just so confused with. Like, even you were talking, you wanted to be about an Arri Alexa Mini, is that correct? Like, I'm like, what the hell? Like, and I'm looking, and it's just camera that's like extremely expensive. And I wish I knew that lingo better. Like, I wish I didn't come across as such a simpleton when it comes to, you know, the terms, or like a Tiffin filter. Like, I'm like, I wish I knew that, like, without Googling it, or a Movi, or a Movi Pro. Like, I wish this was like, I'm going to own it. Like, I know cinematography, but yet I know how much I don't know. So, yeah.
I mean, it's, and I mean, I feel like you kind of, like, the technology is moving so fast these days with all these kind of manufacturers. So it's really great. There's a lot of different resources, and like every month there's new tools, there's new terms, where I think as cinematographers we're even having to learn, you know, in terms of adopting tools and technology that make our sets more efficient, which allows ultimately for like more creative storytelling to happen. You know, if we can be efficient on set with time and energy, you can have more choices then.
Yeah. And I wanted to touch on one more thing before we move on to some of the entries in your amazing filmography. You talked earlier about school, high school in particular, when you were young, and I thought I read somewhere, John, where you tried, instead of, you know, writing the typical research paper, you know, read the book, the site, do all this other stuff, you said, listen, I'll write a script, I'll make a video. Is that true, that part of your life?
That is true. It was a history professor in high school, Coach Madden, and he would kind of put on these elaborate kind of multimedia displays to like show us about different events in history. And so I remember when it came time to end the semester to like write a big paper, I was like, I don't really want to. That sounds not fun. And so I kind of somehow convinced him, hey, can I do a video? Can I do a video project? And he said, sure. And so that was the first time I'd like convinced some friends together to like shoot a little thing on high 8 and edit it in camera while you're doing it, and overdub music and titles and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. And I did it again my senior year with my English teacher as well. It's like I convinced her that I was like, oh, let me write a script and then I'll film the script and that'll be like what I would be writing instead.
Yeah, and what teacher would not be all in on that? Like, that's, you're going, I mean, I know for you it would be more torture to write the research paper, but probably in actuality you're doing more work with the path you wanted to go down, right?
More hours. And that was, I think that's why my parents eventually were like, okay, well, he can go to film school because this is the first thing that he's spending hours doing when we're not having to convince him to do it. You know?
Yeah.
Or it's just spend hours and hours and hours staying up like way too late trying to edit these, you know, these makeshift terrible video projects.
You mentioned Clerks earlier and some indie films, but is there a film that really, and you've probably been asked this on every interview you've ever been on, is there a particular movie that really just, or an actor that really pumped you up when you were younger to get you at this point? Because I mean, you're clearly been passionate since you were a kid. I mean, and it resonates even in this interview, listening to you talk about it. Is there an actor or a movie or movies that really did it for you, John?
I mean, I feel like there was a film, and I don't know if it was at the time or like just immediately after looking back. I remember Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Oh, good call.
Because that was kind of this film that was like, it was not a lot of CG in it. It was things were done practically, and there was just something about that film. I remember seeing the theater, and then when it came out, even I think there might have been even some behind the scenes I had found on VHS somewhere. This is before DVD stuff. I just remember like that film being pretty pivotal in terms of just this idea of making a film. I think that was one of the first films where I was like, oh wow, they actually had to go make that. And how would that be to actually make that film? Like, what would you need and that kind of thing? And so I feel like that was pretty inspirational film from a very young age. And obviously 2001, as I grew up, I guess it was like that film as well. Braveheart was another one that I just would watch over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's a VHS burn it out or DVD burn it out from watching it so many times. Good call. Yeah,
I remember I watched it and then I immediately just watched it again. So those are some of the early, Yeah,
you're the real deal for sure. And knowing that we were going to talk about Old Henry, I tried to say to myself, John, I said, what are the 5 best Westerns I've seen since the year 2000? And this is my list. You could give or take and maybe add or subtract. News of the World with Tom Hanks came out last year. 3:10 to Yuma, which I think has a little bit of Old Henry in it and vice versa. Open Range, Django Unchained, and Old Henry is my 5th. What do you think of that list? Top 5 since 2000.
I mean, yeah, those are all great films. I mean, I think those are all really amazing films. That's what's so great about the Western. It can kind of it's a genre of film, but within that, it can range from being so many different types of tone.
Yeah.
Too, because 3:10 to Yuma has a very different tone than Open Range. And then also very different tone from Django, and very, very different than Old Henry. So it's such a fun genre, I think, to kind of play in and kind of, have your spin on it. But no, I mean, we've been so blown away and taken aback by the response to Old Henry. And like you just mentioned, it is in these like lists, or when people say top 20 films or top this films. And so it's really just, there's so many films I think filmmakers work on, and it's so rare to kind of have something that kind of breaks out and makes as much noise as this film does for what it was, a small film, small intimate film made by a bunch of friends, ultimately.
And I have to say, I never lose track of movies. Like, I know what's coming out. I'm usually at the theater or video on demand or whatever. I catch a movie. This slipped. I mean, I had a friend recommend this. And I don't know how I missed it, John, at first. I mean, I was a few months behind. And then when I saw it, I was just so pissed at myself because I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. I just, the other movie I would have added to this movie, I love the way it looked. I'm not sure I liked the movie so much. It was good, but The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford visually is one of the most beautiful, pretty, just gorgeous movies I've ever seen. And Roger Deakins is a master at that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you kind of step into a Western, it's like hard not to look at the kind of the contemporaries, like Roger Deakins with that film. That film was definitely inspirational.
Yeah.
Just the simple beauty it created. I feel like there's something it's just so painterly, I guess. There's so like kind of poetic and painterly about that film.
John, are you the same? Because I was listening to Roger Deakins talk, and he's big on, like, if he could, I think he would just fire the editor and let his shots lead, like, no cuts, 3 or 4 hour movies, just leave them the way they are. He's so proud of his work, as he should be. Do you ever feel like that? Not to crap on editors or directors, but do you ever feel like, Jesus, I really shot some really good stuff. I wish more was left. Not necessarily just in Old Henry, but any of your projects. As a cinematographer, do you have so much pride where you're like, I wish that's still in there? Or do you have to kind of accept that being part of the team?
I think maybe younger in my career, you kind of have these ideas of, oh, this dolly shot was so complicated to do, or, oh, we rehearsed forever to do this one take and make it all one shot, and then it gets cut up. But I mean, now I think it's all about the story. Ultimately, it's all about the story and how does the piece feel as a whole. Because ultimately, that's what matters, is creating this story, whether it's a 30-second commercial or 90-second film or a 2.5 hour film. It's all about the story. And so I think as long as if that's the priority and that's the focus for the whole team, is what kind of tells that story emotionally the best. Like, how do you emotionally tell that story so you feel something at the end of it? Whatever supports that. And so no, I mean, I think if anything, when I kind of wrap a project and kind of having the conversations with the directors as they're going through cuts and stuff, if anything, I just like to kind of either just remind of these things if there's something that you don't see represented in the film, you just kind of like remind and have conversations, and ultimately if it's not right for the film, it's not right for the film.
Yeah,
that's what it has to be. It's not about one frame, one shot.
No, I get that. And just speaking of your website, which is on the screen, I have to say you have some beautiful all your work is beautiful, but the stills you have from Old Henry, it's like one gorgeous shot after another. It's like, geez, like, and I love the way your website is put together. By the way, I had to.
Oh, thank you.
That. Yeah, it's effective. It's simple. It's to the point. This is my work. For those who may have missed something, it's all laid out. It's a really great website versus mine, which look like I have a second grader designing it. But hey, your website is certainly worth it. So let's get into Old Henry. You and Potsy, and fill in the blanks here for me. You go to Tennessee. There's this 3,000. I guess a farm, 3,000 acre farm. And Potsy is scouting for another movie. And he notices this house maybe on the bottom of the hill. It ends up being the house that Henry lives in. Do I have that part right, John? And that's a super Cliff Notes version of
No, you do. He had sent me a script. This is probably a couple of years before he even sent me the Old Henry script. He's like, hey, I think I'm going to do this Western. Scouting different areas. They scouted Kentucky, they scouted Tennessee, they scouted New Mexico, I think at some point, Oklahoma. And so, yeah, they were literally scouting for this other film and found this property. And I think the property itself was so inspiring. And I think Potsy's even said, he's like, oh wow, what if I was like stuck out here? And then, and he kind of envisioned what that would be like to kind of be out there on your own. And then that was kind of the genesis for, the script, Old Henry.
Now, the whole movie, John, is filmed in that area, correct? Or a good vast majority of it?
It is, yeah. We were all on on that 3,000 acres, or just about 3,000 acres, yeah. So it's like everything was within either a 4x4 truck or a gator kind of crawl to get to wherever we were.
Yeah, and John, one thing I never thought of was the research and time you put into this, as far as researching the photographs, researching the paintings of the time. Talk about that a little bit, because I think history is huge in your profession, right? Especially in a project like this. And you certainly captured the essence of what this movie was supposed to be through that research.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that was immediately where I went to. Once it had all come together and I'd read the script and he was like, okay, and Potts was like, hey, we're going to, start prepping this thing. I think I immediately just went to the photography. I was like, how could you not? To try to be like, how would it feel like to put oneself in that position? Like, how would it actually feel to live in that time period? What did those people, what did those fathers, what did those mothers, what did those sons, what was that lifestyle like? And so I just went down a rabbit hole for a couple of weeks. I think of only looking at black and white images. I feel at one point I even had a dream, I feel like, that was in black and white that would look like this photograph because I'd been looking at those photographs for so long. So like well before we looked at any kind of film references for the film, because that we didn't, Potts and I had a very shorthand about that. It was more just kind of, we talked about the tone of the film we wanted to make. How we wanted things to feel heavy and weathered and textured. And so, yeah, those photographs were just, they were inspiring. Those photographs when I was looking at, because a lot of times too, this early photography, people had to stand still and like kind of have an awkward pose. And then, so it made them kind of, you ever like look into their eyes or into their portraits and almost like, and if you're quiet enough and while you're looking at things like that, sometimes they'll speak back to you. And so like, I felt I was having this kind of trying to like have them speak to me. These people that had lived 100, 150 years ago, like what would that have been like? And then try to like do justice to like what that lifestyle was like, the harshness of it. And it's interesting because someone commented, they were like, after the fact, like, oh, is that why you kind of did more center framing on some things? Like you center framed and had a little bit more headroom. You think that was inspired by all that photography? And I go, I don't know. I mean, like, I didn't actively have that as like a rule of thumb, but I had ingested all this research, ahead of time. So when I was framing up certain shots on set, you just instinctually something in me says to do something. And that's probably because I had been looking at these photographs for so long, right. Or you see how things in the background look, especially with, Andrew Wyeth, the painter, the American painter, like his stuff is just incredible at how kind of simple, like the lives he's trying to tell, right? These simple lives, but there's like so much emotion in the paintings and like what causes that. And it's like, oh, it's the details in the background. And so like looking at those paintings and stuff would then, I'd be like, oh, I want to have this on the table. I want to have like a bowl on the table with eggs in it. right now, just because like I had seen that in a painting, you know? So it's like you're just inspired by different things that make you feel something. And so I was constantly trying to just put that into the film, you know, put that in there.
John, safe to say it worked. You know, I was dying to play you a clip, but I don't want to ruin the movie for anybody who hasn't seen it yet that's watching this interview. Hopefully I can describe one of the scenes that's just not just in this movie. Like, I'm talking in the last 10 years that just, I did not see this coming, and I'll leave the reveal to the side, but I want to talk about the way you and Jordan Lenning, the composer, just work hand in hand, in that when they finally figure out who he is, the big reveal, right? He figures it out. The music Jordan's music is amazing. And then your camera work, as he's walking in the other room after passing his son on the left, you purposely kind of make it phase it out. Do you know what I'm talking about? It gets fuzzy. And then when it gets back in again, it goes to a picture of the reveal. I thought that whole 3 minutes was effing genius. Like, I have never seen... Maybe because I was caught off guard, but the way the cinematography works and the composition works and what Potsy was trying to achieve, it is perfect movie making. It's perfect.
Thank you. You know, I will have to say that was one of those scenes where you read it on the page and you're anxious about that up until you shoot it, because you're like, this is one of those pivotal scenes that if it's done incorrectly, it doesn't work. Right. You know, you almost have to kind of, the scene has to be elevated beyond the page, beyond the ideas that we all were kind of coming out with. And I will have to say that Scott Hayes, he's just a ferocious actor. He's a beautiful human. He's just a great, just all around kind of collaborator, and his performance in that moment. I mean, I still get goosebumps thinking about that performance, because I remember being on set. I feel like we only did 1 or 2 takes of it, and he just brought it. He was in the zone. The actors were just in the zone on this film. And so when he brought that performance, I mean, I tell him that's why the movie works, is like that scene right there, you know, like, and that's all him. It's like a very kind of lengthy monologue kind of to himself that you have to believe that, like, you have to go on that journey and see it. And so, again, and with, you know, I think with the whole film, we tried to just be really simple with the camera, you know, and try to let the actors be in the space, be in the moment, be in the emotions. And so, again, I feel like there's only 4 or 5 shots in that whole sequence. Once Henry gets up to leave the room, you know, we've got a shot that follows him. We've got a shot that stays on Scott Hayes right there. That's the one shot that does it. We did shoot a profile, but we didn't even use it, because, like, you don't need to cut away from his performance. It's so good. And then, I remember when we were making that decision to kind of leave it out of focus. It was one of those things where, like, I think Tim was just kind of walking through it, and we were kind of set up for it. And then he was just going through his motions, and the camera was just kind of sitting there, and we all looked at each other and said, "Oh, we have to. We're doing that. We're not racking to that. We're going to leave that out of focus." So that was not something that we had gone into that scene with that intention.
So that wasn't planned, going out of focus when he's walking to the room.
It was one of those things of like, oh wow, maybe that works better, and then it kind of did, and then we left it there. And because it's like, you know, you give some mystery, you still want some mystery in there, so it worked. You know, it was a choice, and you know, and Potsy and I are just we're very kind of simpatico, I guess, on that, in terms of like our aesthetics and the films that we like and the films that we like to make together. And so we just instantly were like, yes, let's do that, you know, and didn't even think twice about it. You know, do you want to get a safety that's in focus? No, we're good, move on.
Yeah, that's to go from that to the what's on the ground, and to the picture, and it's unbelievable how much Tim Blake Nelson it resembles. You know,
it's amazing. Yeah, he channeled him. I feel like he channeled. You know, he reached back into the collective consciousness, and definitely channeled.
And I'm glad you brought up Scott Hayes, because he is so freaking good in this, and he narrates the scene without narrating the scene. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, his line, he is talking to that audience, and he is dictating what is happening. And as he's piecing it together, the audience is piecing. Like, the fact that this was 1 or 2 takes, it makes it even more surreal for me. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. You know, he had. I mean, it's funny talk about Scott a little bit more. Like, it's funny in that film, there was like he because he's a wounded gunslinger that Tim Blake Nelson brings in, and so like it's funny, half the film he's almost not doing anything because he's wounded and he's hurt, and then he has to carry these massive scenes. There's like a dinner table scene where again he's got these massive amount of scenes that it was an awe to watch that process, because like these handful of scenes that are just made by his performance. Obviously Tim Blake Nelson as well, but I remember that dinner table scene where it's just a conversation. It was like a 7-minute, maybe a 10-minute long scene where it's just a conversation at a dinner table, and the director and I were so excited about that scene because we were just like, this is going to be a scene. We're going to make this a scene. And it's so simple too, right? We're just like, This is going to be a thing. Like we have to just take our time with that.
When I compared to 3:10 to Yuma earlier, I thought the ending, not like in a kind of copied way, but in a just the way the path goes. I wonder if Potsy or you or anybody thought about perhaps a different ending. Because it was very there's something about those kinds of losses that hit my heart, like the son finding life on his own, and I don't know. I always like that, but I get it. It makes the story better. Do you think that was ever discussed, an alternate type of ending?
I don't think so. I mean, there was some alternate action stuff that we had to kind of adapt. But I think for the ending, it's it's one of those films where I mean, I think the ending was always going to be that. I think it had to be that. It was yeah.
Yeah, the I want everything perfect, and the Shane riding off in the sunset. That's my issue, not yours. But what a wonderful movie. I wanted to say that last shootout at the end, that was really great. That whole, as you're filming that shootout at the end, we talked about Scott a little bit. Just whatever you wanted to say about Tim Blake Nelson and Stephen Dorff, who I feel like are two of the most underrated, underappreciated actors alive today. Like, these guys can just flat out act. There's like when I watch a show, John, or I watch a movie, I'm like, oh boy, this person's just rattling off a script. There is not a part of me that didn't believe the lingo that was going back and forth, and that these guys weren't on either side of good and bad. Like, I thought this was really, to me, it was like watching a documentary. I thought this was really happening. That's how effective I think these two are.
And they're both fierce, ferocious actors, right? I mean, they just kind of embody. I think that they both have very different methods of working, and so that's always interesting to kind of see people's processes. But yeah, I mean, they both, to pull off kind of some of that script and some of that dialogue that is challenging to make it, like you said, believable. And so, I mean, that final shootout where it's just kind of where it breaks down to just them in the woods, that was something that we were really excited about. From one of the best
scenes in the movie. Really, just a great, like, old fashioned. That's how it would have been seen in the Wild West.
Yeah, and that scene kind of came about. Originally, there was going to be like they were going to cross into a creek, and it was going to be a drowning thing. It was going to be more of a kind of it was going to be more of a kind of hand to hand thing. And then at the last, this is maybe like a week before we were supposed to shoot that. They'd already like choreographed it as well. We came back that we couldn't. They tested the water as you do, to make sure that you can put actors in it, and it came back that we couldn't do that. There was stuff in the water that prevented us from submerging actors in the water.
Gotcha.
And so it kind of it was fall back to like what is these two powerhouse characters that represent kind of good and evil. What should they do? And it's like, oh, let's just do this shootout. And Potsy was like, I just want an old fashioned shootout, something that is, it was definitely inspired by Open Range, just in terms of kind of how that I think the violence was kind of handled.
Yeah.
And one of the things I remember talking about early on was like counting of the bullets and how many bullets, and that was something that was very important to us, and to make it sure that like you actually got to see what it would be like. Like you would have to reload. You may drop one. You only have so many shots, because I think in a lot of films, guns just go off and you're kind of unaware of it. You know what I mean? As far as like
cars going 80 miles an hour and they have one bullet left. And
I mean, there's films where that works, and I think that's great, where it needs to just be the chaos and that works for it. But for this, I feel like to kind of be true to this kind of authentic thing that we were all kind of going for. And so that final shootout was something that we had the shot list. We shot listed the whole movie, but that one in particular, we had our shot list. and it was really, we shot that entire sequence probably in like 2.5 to 3 hours.
Wow.
On our last day of filming, and we had to shoot it. We actually shot it in the editorial order because we had to, based on where the light was, as well as how we were doing the blood makeup effects.
Right.
Because a lot of that was done in camera. And so it had to be done in a way where we were pointing this way for one shot. Now we turn around and shoot this way. Now we would do that way. So we literally shot it in almost, editorial order. And there was not more than, I think that was, everything was basically a take or 2 takes because we were so limited on time. And so I have to give it up to my just amazing crew that kind of had no idea what was going on because we were just like, okay, camera here now. And they just were like, they were on it, and David Afferton, who did our makeup, our special makeup and effects, he's just a legend, in the business. And so it was just a dream to be able to collaborate with him. And so I think his part in that whole sequence, is just his collaboration on the film. It was just an honor to work alongside him. I think one of his early films was Tombstone. So it's like we've got the makeup special effects, legend that did Tombstone is now working on our movie. I think him and Tim had worked together a bunch. And so Tim was able to kind of convince him to come make this movie with us. But that final shootout was really wild in the sense of, there was no room for error in terms of filmmaking because it was our last day. We were losing the light because of other things. We got there a little later and we just had to shoot it in such a way. And so it's one of the proudest moments I know Patsy and I have. There's like 2 scenes like that on the film where there's nothing left. There's nothing in the editorial bins. It's all there. There's actually one shot where the camera focuses in and you could tell it's like the rack focus from the slate in, and they added it. They needed to like lengthen that one shot. So you actually see it kind of like racks into focus on one of them. Yeah. Which I think works with the emotion, but like every frame that we shot is in there. I don't think there's a single unused frame.
Yeah, and it's amazing what Patsy put together as far as just everyone involved. Like, I mean, I remember Jordan just talking about how great your cinematography, and you guys are all complimentary of each other, and the proof is in the pudding. It's on screen. The other scene, which I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that I loved, was the floorboard scene. I thought that was freaking creative as all hell, and it was just so much fun to watch. Like, what a creative scene! I mean, it's almost horror-like in a sense that, like, where is this? What is going on here? It's dark out. I mean, another phenomenal scene, John.
And that's a scene that came about because of the location. Originally, on the script, that was supposed to be in a barn, but we didn't have a barn, and so it's like, I remember Patsy being like, "Look, this house is up on some stones. It's up on it's built on kind of up. So it would make sense that you would go under there." And so that's one of those scenes that every time we would envision that scene, talk about that scene, storyboard that scene, we would just get more and more excited as filmmakers. And so every time we'd have a tech scout or a new actor would show up, we'd go to the scene, we would get excited just showing the scene to them. Patsy and I would like act it out in our own way, just be like, "Oh, this is what's going to happen," because we were so excited about it.
Was that house abandoned, or does somebody live there?
That house is it's one of the original settlers' cabins for that area. So that cabin's actually from like 1880 or something like that. So it's actually the house is really old, and so over the time it's been used for different like photo shoots, or now it just is available for filming. A bunch of music videos and stuff like that. So it's just kind of this property that has these like structures on it. So what was really amazing too is that the house was there, but then our art department came in and kind of aged it and did just an amazing job to it. Added that porch, because that was actually the back of the house, but we made that the front of the house in the film. Because there's actually a road on the other side of the house that we never shoot, obviously. But so it's actually, we kind of reversed the geography of the house. And then what they did was to build onto the house, because they wanted to kind of keep the integrity of the structure. They actually took some old barnwood from structures of that same era and then built what we built on with actual wood that was like, 125 years old. So that's pretty special, I think, that like the way in which we were building onto the set to kind of keep it authentic, I guess, with using existing wood from around the property.
Very creative. 2 quick questions, John. Thank you for all this time. The one of which is, when you saw this for the first time when it was edited, finished, and previewed, premiere. What was your first take on it? Were you? I mean, I know people say sometimes they get very critical of the final product, not of the product, but of themselves. I could have done this, I could have done that. What was your initial reaction, John?
I remember this is a good one. There was we went to a tech screening, and a tech screening is something that happens, if you're having a big premiere at a festival, where you go in and you maybe get like 15 minutes in the room with like your producer. For me, it was the producers, the director, and myself, and we were basically just kind of like screening 10 minutes of the film. We should just to see and make sure that looks good, the sound, check the volume level, you do all these things, right? And so I remember we watched the opening sequence, and we just kind of, Potts and I just turned to each other, and we both, it was like out of body experience, and we both kind of were like, I think we just made a Western. It was like the first time it actually had hit us, because you're watching on kind of laptops or screens, or you're in the DI suite, and so it's all a little mechanical. You're overly critical of it all, trying to get it all, you're still working on the film at that point, so you don't really get a sense of like what the scope of it is. And so we were at one of the Palais in Venice, and it was just this amazing, huge theater, huge screen, and you're like, our work is about to be seen on this giant. This is incredible, for, I don't know. It was just one of those experiences where it was a moment. It was a moment, and it was like, I think we just made a Western.
Yeah, my only regret is I did not see it on the big screen. I wish I did. Because I think this is a movie that's perfect for the big screen. Tell me about Heart of a Lion and Acid Man, two of my next projects that I'm going to watch. I want to be a part of this. Tell me what you can. Heart of a Lion, I think, is still in production. Acid Man, I think, is done, or if not close to it.
Acid Man is premiering. Acid Man's premiering at the Tribeca Film Festival, I think next week, actually, the week after next. So that's cool. I'm very excited about that. That was done with Alex Lehman was the director of that. He's an old film school friend of mine, and so that was a project, a project he'd been wanting to make for a while. And so, really proud of what we did on that film. It has Thomas Hayden Church in it, and
he's great.
Diana Agron, and they're both great in it. It's an intimate film about a father and a daughter trying to connect. And then Heart of a Lion is kind of a massive scale like biopic of George Foreman. From his days as a boxer, and then a minister, and then a boxer again. And so I'm excited to see. I'm excited for everyone to see what we've been working on, because it's been great.
Yeah, and I'm very excited about both, and I'm very excited about your future, John. Boy, are you talented, and thank you so much for giving me the time you gave me today. Big fan, and I truly, truly love your work, John.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I mean, that's really like, wow, I don't know, to hear kind of reaction like that, or response to my work, it's like, it takes outlets and podcasts, and it takes people sitting down and talking to hear more about the process and more about it. So it means a lot. It does take these outlets and places to discuss films. And I don't know, I'm a lover of cinema. I love cinema, and so it's like any chance to talk about it, I love. It shows. Thank you.
And I told Jordan, I said, when I was done with watching this movie the first time, I said I wanted to beat your door down and Jordan's door down, and just give you guys high fives for what you guys just created. I mean, I was sitting next to my wife, and I just kept talking about the cinematography, and she goes, "Will you just stop talking?" I go, listen to this music, look what's on the screen. Like, she's like, "Will you just stop? You're ruining it for me." But I'm a huge fan of you, John. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. That's thank you. I'm just glad you're able to see the film, and so it's just, you do this work and you work on a small, like an intimate film. You just hope it resonates. So we're just excited that people have seen the movie.
yeah, and nothing but the best for you in the future, John. And I hope you come back on someday.
Yeah, I would love that.